name is Taki Suleiman. I'm the Chief Executive of Argyll and Bute Third Sector Interface. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. We've got a very exciting evening ahead of you. I find it exciting. I find elections really exciting, really important. I know there's a sort of a wave of cynicism that sometimes overwhelms the body politic, but the Scottish Government spends approximately £67.9 billion of your money every year. So it's really, really important that we encourage people. Perhaps they're not here today, because I suspect you'll all be voting to vote, to participate, to check out each of the candidates' statements. So we're not expecting a fire alarm today, so there's the fire escape, so please run in that direction in an orderly fashion. You're not allowed to run, so scrub that. I should be warning you all that we are live streaming this event today, and it will be available on the argylltsi.org website for viewing afterwards, for those of you who love politics like I do. And we are taking photographs as well. James has kindly volunteered to do that for us today. In terms of the format, I'm going to say a few words about the TSI and a little bit about the process, and then we will ask each candidate in turn to take 3 minutes to broadly talk about the importance of the community and third sector in Argyll and Bute. It's up to them what they do and what they say, but we've asked them broadly to talk about that because this is a community and third sector hustings. And many of you, of course, are from third sector organisations. We've had about 14 or 15, in fact, scrap that, we've had 18 questions submitted. So given there's 4 candidates, I'm going to have to redo my maths, aren't I? But we should just about manage most of those questions in that time if we are quite strict into time. So that means some of you have got quite long questions. I'd be grateful if you could truncate them and think about that. Is your question nice and short? Go straight to the final sentence if in any doubt. That's a good way of doing editing. And we're going to ask again each candidate in turn to speak for a minute to the question. We may ask you as the questioner, are you satisfied with the answers? Is there something else you would like to ask? If we've got time, I'll just see how the event is progressing. We're going to finish bang on the dot at 8:30 because these guys have been campaigning hard and will need to be fresh for the rest of the campaign. There's another 3.5 weeks to go. So I've talked about the importance of elections. We know that people are generally a little bit reluctant right across the globe to vote, particularly in Western democracies. But if, like me, my mother's Greek, they love the vote. They absolutely adore it. She grew up during the aftermath of the junta, and she uses her vote religiously. She loves to vote, and I think we should hold that in mind when we meet people who are reluctant or they're all the same. They're not all the same. We've got some fantastic questions, which I hope will draw out the distinction between our candidates and their parties' positions for you. That's down to you guys to ask really, really good, concise questions. So again, for those of you who are not aware of the election timetable, you've got until the 20th of April to register to vote. Spread the word in the community. If people just moved into the area or haven't registered, get them to register on the government website. I'll put that up on our website when I get back home tonight. They've got until the 21st of April. Intervention activity in your communities. It's very localised. But we're finding it hard. We know the cost of living crisis. We know that with the challenges that you have in terms of fundraising, we know the difficulties we've got in terms of volunteering, and indeed we've got a question on volunteering later, that groups are finding it harder to survive and to deliver their services. So it's very, very important for us. And we know that there are a lot of groups who deliver a lot of different types of services, whether it be in the environmental space or the health and social care space or indeed anything else. And they're absolutely vital to the lifeblood of our communities. I was looking at the stats the other day, and the third sector is the third largest employer, not including volunteers, in Scotland. So a really, really vital sector for the lifeblood of our country. And it reminds me, I've forgotten to mention one of our partners. This is Time for Change. They're one of our partners here. We've got 3 hustings across Argyll and Bute. But only 2 in this particular constituency. So we've got one in Dunoon on the 20th of the month, and we've got one on the 28th in Helensburgh in the Civic Centre. So if you're interested in going to another constituency, or if someone else is interested in hearing from the parties, please direct them that way. Time for Change are co-sponsors today. So, I think without further ado, I'm going to ask the first candidate that's Jenny Minto, to introduce herself and speak for approximately 3 minutes, which I shall time, and then we'll move on to the next candidate. Jenny, thank you. And I should say, before Jenny comes up, that there are 3 other candidates. I should have said that. There's Amanda Hampsey from Reform, there is Tommy McPherson, who's an independent, and there's Mick Rice, who is another independent. Everybody has been invited multiple times. You can read into that what you will. So Jenny, on that note, and sorry to go to you first, you actually sit next to me. So.
Also say tacky, age before beauty, or ladies first. So thank you very much, and it's fantastic to be back in Oban. I was here yesterday and was very pleased to welcome the First Minister to Oban. When I have had the privilege of representing Argyll and Bute for the last 5 years in the Scottish Parliament, and whenever I'm speaking there, either as an MSP or as a government minister, I always say I have the privilege of representing Argyll and Bute, Scotland's most beautiful constituency, not just because of the landscape, but very much so because of the people. And I think that's why we're here tonight with the TSI and also Time for Change. I very much believe that a person has values that are to their core, and I joined a party that I believe represents my values, and that is kindness, community, and supporting everyone. I also want independence. However, until we achieve the normality of independence, I want to ensure that Scotland is a thriving community. And for the last 5 years representing Argyll and Bute, that's what I have tried to achieve. And again, in the last 3 years as a government minister. My upbringing was in St Andrews, and I had very good role models in both my parents. And they volunteered, they took me along to various events, whether it was at the lifeboat, the church, various other areas. Maybe it was just for the tablet, but I certainly went along and helped. And I think that's really important. And then when I moved to Isla, I felt the difference that I could make there was using my skills as a qualified accountant to support charities, and that's what I did. I also volunteered at the community garden and also helped raise funds and establish the community wind turbine, which ensured that there's continual income to the community, which is incredibly important. I came into politics late. I have only been in politics for the last 5 years. There were 2 politicians who were both women who I recognise made decisions for me. One was Margaret Thatcher, and she said there is no such thing as society, which I totally disagree with. The other was Hillary Clinton, who said it takes a village to raise a child, and I completely agree with that. And in my role as MSP, I have seen that to support, publicise, encourage all the work that happens in the third sector across Argyll and Bute. And in government, I meet very regularly. I met very regularly with lots of different health-related third sector organisations. So in Oban, we've got Healthy Options, the Dove Centre, Atlantis, Hope Kitchen, Youth Cafe, Cargorm, a great group of charities that work together. That was highlighted at the Restore fashion show 2 weeks ago, where it was very clear that the thing that works is collaboration, not competition. So if you re-elect me as your MSP, that is the job that I promise that I will do for all of you. Thank you.
We're just going to swap the mic over. There was a wee bit of feedback there. Slight technical hitch, as they say. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks Jenny. And can I ask Alan Reid of the Scottish Liberal Democrats? Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Tacky, and thanks to all of you for coming along tonight, and thank you to TSI for organising this evening's hustings. Third sector organisations have a very important role to play in delivering services in Scotland, and they must be better supported by governments and the local councils. Change is essential, but it must be change with fairness at its heart. And to raise the money that we need in taxes to improve our public services, we need to grow our economy. And on day one, Liberal Democrats will invite leading figures from Scottish business, industry, economics and other key stakeholders to work with us to quickly form an economic growth and business strategy. With the extra money that we are going to raise, and also by eliminating waste, there will be commitments in our manifesto to ensure that third sector and voluntary organisations have the stability they need with long-term funding arrangements. Our manifesto is not published till Friday. The details will be in there, but there will definitely, I'm assured there will definitely be a section for supporting the third sector. When I was the local MP, which I was for 14 years, I found that many third sector organisations had applied for and been awarded grants to establish themselves, but in many cases were expected to raise their own funds from then on. This proved impossible in many cases. So as well as grants to set up organisations, and voluntary organisations and charities, we also need to guarantee them stable funding for the long term, because it's only with the realisation of the guarantee of stable funding for the long term can organisations plan properly for the future. Local councils also need to be properly funded, so they in turn can properly fund third sector organisations. I was the local MP for 14 years. I worked closely with many third sector organisations during that time. I enjoyed my time as the local MP, getting things done for the local community, and so that's why I decided to stand again, because I want to see Argyll and Bute prosper. Third sector organisations have a very important role in that, and if I'm elected, I undertake to work with third sector organisations, and as a Liberal Democrat, I've outlined the policies we would put in place to raise extra money for the public sector and the third sector. That's our plans, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Good evening. I'm Callum. I'm one of your local doctors at Lorne Islands Hospital and your Labour candidate. The question we're discussing tonight is not just about bureaucracy and spreadsheets and numbers. It's about who we trust to deliver for our communities when public spending is under pressure. For too long, the government in Edinburgh has acted as if it has a monopoly on solutions. But as we see every day in Oban, from our local charities to our social enterprises, the most impactful work often happens far away from a government office. My party believes that in difficult financial times, the role of government isn't just to spend, it's to enable. Scottish Labour will move away from the stick and plaster approach to community funding. We're pledging a new deal for the third sector to support better value and provide the long-term stability that our social enterprises and third sector organisations in Argyll desperately need. We'll end the culture of short-term, year-to-year grants that force charities to spend more time filling out forms than delivering services. We will negotiate sustainable funding agreements for the long term, putting our community partners on a genuinely stable footing. We'll also use the power of the public purse to back our local social enterprises directly. Scottish Labour will reform procurement rules so we build and buy better in Scotland. Instead of multi-million-pound contracts going to distant corporations, we'll prioritise local jobs and social value. ensuring public money stays in the Argyll economy. This will be backed by our local democracy bill, which will push power out of Holyrood and back into the hands of our communities, giving Oban a statutory say in how local assets are run and utilised. We will fund this by ending government waste and cutting a third of Scotland's 133 quangos. We don't need any more overpaid board members in Edinburgh. We need more investment in the community link workers, the youth clubs and the social care providers who are the real backbone of this town and the surroundings. On May the 7th, vote for a government that doesn't just manage the decline, but empowers the people of Oban to lead the recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Callum. And can I ask Peter Wallace of the Scottish Conservatives up next for your 3 minutes?
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Peter Wallace. I'm the slightly unexpected candidate for the Conservatives here in Argyll and Bute. And I'm standing because communities across Argyll and Bute need representation that puts local priorities first and delivers practical solutions to the people that people deal with every day. I'm also pleased to be able to attend this third sector hustings because my involvement with the community started with the third sector, and I'm still involved with some of these voluntary groups to this day. So I know the pressures that are being faced to deliver services that are of real value to our communities and are crucial to them flourishing. And we know exactly what the problems are: transport links that can't be relied upon, housing that's too scarce or too expensive for young people, families and essential workers, public services that don't always reflect the realities of community life, businesses and community organisations working hard but often being held back by decisions that are made far away from here. These issues shape daily life. They affect work, healthcare, education, family commitments and the long-term future of our area. They deserve serious attention and a clear plan for improvement. I'm also one of your local councillors, and I know that cuts from central government have put pressure on the council finances, which in turn puts pressure on those groups who deliver services for the council. And that brings with it uncertainty and budgets that are constantly under threat. My focus is simple: practical solutions that make a real difference. A transport system that's reliable and accountable, affordable homes in places that people actually want to live, support for local businesses and community-led projects that keep rural economies strong, public services that are designed with residents and not imposed upon them. The Conservatives would raise local government funding and guarantee it a fixed portion of government funding so communities can fund their local third sector organisations as they know what the needs are. So I'm not interested in another 5 years of constitutional debates. People want action on ferries, housing, roads and employment, not years of political arguments that don't fix a single local problem. My commitment is to concentrate on the issues that matter to you and to take your voice into the decisions that affect your lives. My approach has always been to listen, to engage and to push for change where it is needed, and that's the approach that I would take to Holyrood. Thank you.
Right, we're just now moving into the questions part. I'm going to read out some questions and we're going to have an opportunity for some of you to read them out. I might read others if people have asked me. And we're giving candidates about a minute for their initial response. I'm just going to move one of these over here, because I've been asked to do for the press who are assembled here today. And the first question, I'm just having a look here, and Joy, are you in the room? Joy Cameron.
I am.
You're in the front row. Do you have your question to hand?
Yes, it's in my head.
It's in your head, fantastic.
Thank you very much, Dookie.
The cost of living crisis is a phrase which has become a standard in the last few years. I'd like to ask each of you, what or who do you think has been the cause of the cost of living crisis? And what would a vote for you do to take us out of this critical situation?
Okay, I'm going to pass this to Peter. You've got a minute. I'm going to start at the opposite end of the room. Over to you, and have a minute.
Thank you. I mean, I think the cost of living crisis has had various causes that have built up over the last few years. You know, from global energy prices going up, but I think what makes it worse for our communities is the rising taxes that we're facing under the SNP. So our plan would be to cut income tax, which would deliver a net benefit across the community of up to £2,183, and we would also use ScotWind revenues to provide energy bill relief. We would also look to scrap new net zero household costs and support businesses to get Scotland working again.
Callum, over to you.
So yes, I think it's multifactorial. There's a lot of causes, but I don't think it's helped having the SNP have quite a hands-off and mediocre approach over the last 20 years to government. As Peter said, soaring bills, there's hollowed out town centres and a real struggle for families who work hard but feel like they're not getting anywhere or not getting anything for it. Some of the immediate steps that the Scottish Labour government would take to try and rectify this would be to cap costs for childcare, topping up tax-free childcare and providing breakfast club in every school. We would aim for the ambitious target of 125,000 new homes in this over the next Parliament to fix the broken market and to provide more support for first-time buyers. We would widen the eligibility for energy efficiency support, dropping the age threshold for warmer homes Scotland to the age of 70, and increase rural grant uplifts by at least £500. And we would properly fund financial inclusion by redirecting at least £2 million of dormant asset funding and advice services accessible to everyone in Scotland.
That's perfect. I really should turn that off. Alan, please go ahead.
Right, well, thanks, Joy, for the question. To answer the first part of the question, who's responsible? Well, I think Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump are the two most responsible people. But we can't do anything. We can't do anything about them. So the question really is, what would we do to alleviate the crisis? Well, Liberal Democrats would, as an emergency measure, bring down fuel duty by 10 pence. That would help everybody because of the reduction in freight costs for delivering goods, as well as reducing the cost of motoring. We would adopt an emergency insulation programme because there's so many houses in Scotland are still
10 seconds.
Fairly insulated, and we would generate much more energy in Scotland with our own cheaper, cleaner energy, and so bring down electricity bills.
Thanks for the question. I think it's clear that the cost of living crisis is down to political choices and not choices that are made here in Scotland. We can look at the A to E of the reasons for the cost of living crisis: austerity, Brexit, COVID, disastrous budgets, and egos of Trump and Putin. So there are all these reasons, but what the SNP have been doing is the increasing or mitigating. So where there's the bedroom tax, the SNP has mitigated the bedroom tax. We don't pay for prescriptions directly, you do in England. And we've also, when England removed the winter fuel allowance, the SNP said that they would maintain it. What the SNP has called out for today is to cut fuel duties. Ireland has done that twice. It's also reduced a package of €750 million to support families. So I would suggest that if you want to do that, if you want to reduce the cost of living, then it's a fresh start with independence by voting for the SNP.
Thank you for the candidates. Joy, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you want to ask another follow-up question or make a comment?
The only thing I was wondering was why Brexit hadn't been mentioned, but it has been mentioned now, because I think we'd all agree, well, maybe we wouldn't all agree, but it does seem that that might have been part of the challenge. Who has, is it the tax on fuel, the fuel duty, is that a devolved, is that a devolved, a reserved issue? Oh, so it wouldn't, yeah. Right, I'm just interested with some people saying we do that.
Okay.
Right away, but you're calling for it.
Thank you. Now, I'm looking at my little list here. We have a question, quite a long one, from Douglas Fontaine. Oh, Doug, you're sat at the front. That's fantastic.
It's a conspiracy.
Can you remember your question? I'm looking at the 3 paragraphs here. Have you got a shorter question?
I will truncate it.
Fantastic. Over to you.
Okay. Basically, this question is purely about renewable energy generation and storage. And can we somehow refeed this money back into local communities? Have local community, especially in rural areas, actually able to buy into this? It's quite a complex thing to do, so it would need assistance on a financial front and putting together business plans. But generating energy is like a license to print money, so we should be able to put together the systems and give the local communities the opportunity and the expertise to be able to facilitate it. Was that truncated in the
That's fantastic. Thank you. So I'm going to move down. So Callum, you're first. If I can give you this one. And your minute starts now.
Okay, so yeah, I've heard this. This is a big issue for a lot of people, and who've been affected by also green energy projects going ahead in their communities, even against the wishes of local community consultations, etc. Partially because I think they know that often they don't see the benefit locally. And I think it'll be important as a first step to redefine what community benefit actually means when these projects are being reviewed for approval, to make sure that funds derived from local projects actually deliver tangible long-term results. But going further than that, municipal co-ownership of energy projects in our communities or near our communities, I think, would be a huge benefit, because that is real, that is tangible, and that there will be real money then flowing into communities rather than just a lip service.
To answer your question, simply yes. I mean, communities have to be given the opportunity of much more benefit from renewable energy generation systems that are impacting on their communities. I mean, that could be done in several ways. One is we would greatly increase the community benefit that communities can get from renewable energy schemes that are privately owned. We'd also want to help and support communities that want to establish their own generation scheme, and also change the rules and encourage communities to take a share in generation schemes that big companies are setting up, because at the moment the money mostly seems to go to the landowner and the big company, so communities have to be given a much greater share in these schemes.
I referenced in my introductory remarks that I was involved in establishing the Isla Energy Trust community wind turbine, and part of the reason for us doing that was because we had feed-in tariffs, and that made direct generation of income through renewables directly to the community. Given that that decision was reserved by Westminster, we no longer can do feed-in tariffs. So the Scottish Government is doing what it can with the limited powers that it has. And I give you a specific example of here in Argyll and Bute. There was a wind farm in Cowell that was being repowered. The community put in a bid, but there was no specific allocation or positive marks for it being a community bid. And as a result of that, out of about 6 or 8 different bids, they came fourth, which isn't bad. I think it's pretty impressive for a community. As a result of that, I spoke to Gillian Martin, the Cabinet Secretary for Energy, and she has now changed the rules
we are doing, the Scottish Government is doing what it can in the limited powers that it has. What we need are the full powers that independence will give us.
I agree that local communities should be more involved and should be more empowered in community generation. I'm involved in a group that has the 3 turbines, so I know firsthand the benefit that can be both to the organisation and to the local community where it's sited. But I think we also need to recognise the local community more in the planning process and give them a greater voice. And we would do that by abolishing the Scottish Government's Energy Consent Unit and bring the power back to the local community to make these decisions.
So Doug is putting you on the spot. There doesn't seem to be a huge amount of difference between the answers. What do you think? Do you have an additional question to try to find the differences? Do you have an opinion on what's been said? On the spot.
Yeah, no, I think that it's good to hear all of the responses and the positive sides of it. But basically, I was talking with John Sweeney about this yesterday, and at the end of the day, we're really hamstrung until we can get devolution happening. We become basically an independent country. Then we can do it, and we can put in place very positive things. And looking at big issues like getting the finance, maybe getting it from places like Norway that have got a giant wealth fund available to them, and they might well be able to help us, because we can build business plans that will work.
Thank you ever so much. I'm going to move on to our third question now, and I'm looking at it's a very specific question, it's very short as well. Do we have Drew Ferguson in the room? Drew, do you remember your question? Right.
But can I put some meat in the bone to it?
Very quick. It's very quick.
My name's Drew Ferguson. I'm the audiology manager for Argyll and the Isles, and I cover about 10% of Scotland, 5 hospitals, 5 islands. Just looking at the last 13 years, we've won Best in Britain twice, daily record best team in Scotland, audiology team. We've got the best, the lowest waiting list in the United Kingdom today. We've got a 97% satisfaction rate. However, 14 years ago they shut down the School of Audiology in Edinburgh. There is no audiology being produced. And what I hear from politicians I've watched in Holyrood, and they talk about having local community-based audiology services. What they did in England was they franchised NHS services to the private sector. Are these politicians planning to do the same?
It's a very good question there. Fantastic. So we'll start with Alan.
Well, I think the audiology services should be available on the high street for people to be able to access. It shouldn't just be because, if for example you you're referred through your GP, it should also be available in the high street. So I would like to see that change made, but any change has got to be working with the Health and Social Care Partnership and working with the community, because obviously there are obviously in Argyll and Bute, with the islands, for example, there might not be a big enough community on the island to merit the private sector opening a shop. So that would have to be, the references would still have to be done the same way as it is at the moment. So I think it's horses for courses. Different communities might have different options would be best. So I would like to describe it, where I would like to have the option of the high street walk-in audiology, but it depends on the particular community.
Drew, thanks very much for your question. Audiology is one of the areas that was in my portfolio as a government minister, and I was very pleased to be able to reschedule the officials within the Scottish Government to a sensory loss team, and that means that audiology has a specific home, because I was very aware that it needed that specific home. As a result, I've had meetings, I've been to Forth Valley, I've also had meetings with Tayside to understand the concerns that they have about audiology, and also importantly, I've had a lot of meetings with healthcare scientists, because in my view, they are an element of NHS Scotland that are undervalued and need improved value, and I've been very clear and have set out a policy to do that. With regards to community audiology, I think there are horses for courses, and I think it depends on your need. But I wouldn't make any decisions until I had everybody that was appropriate round the table. Exactly the same the way that we dealt with ophthalmology as well. So I would open up discussions on that if I'm re-elected.
Sorry. Maybe should make sure it's shoelaces for time.
As someone whose family relies on the audiology service, it's for me the importance is the service user being able to access the service in a reasonable timescale. And I'm sure, I know the local service provides a great quality service, but I think if there is other ways that we can supplement that, then I wouldn't object to that either. So I think whatever will deliver the best outcome for the service user, that would be my focus.
So, as somebody who has referred a lot of people to your service, I know that it's very good because they always get well looked after. To answer your question directly, there's nothing in our manifesto about franchising out to the private sector, but we are not opposed to using private sector on a limited term basis, because we are in a national waiting times crisis just now. We need to use every resource we get access to drive those waiting times down and get people seen and get them treated. And we do need to train more health science specialists, including audiologists. We have to reverse that decline in skills.
Drew, do you want to follow up on that?
Well,
Or are you
my
happy?
problem is, if I'm not training enough guys like me, when somebody goes to the private sector and they've got asymmetric hearing loss, asymmetric tinnitus, vertigo, brain tumour, cancers, I'm not going to be there in 5 or 6 years. I'll be retired. So you need to train guys like me. The private sector may have a part to play in this, but if you don't have guys like me, people up here are going to have to travel hundreds of miles down to Glasgow to see ENT who are already flat on their back, basically.
Thank you. We're just going to move on to our 5th question now, and we have James Strang. Are you in the room?
No, I'm not. I'm not going to ask it.
Do you want me to ask it for you?
No, thank you.
That's fine. I shall move on to the next one. And let's have a look. Do we have Doogie Graham in the room?
Yeah.
Doogie, are you happy to ask your question?
Aye, on you go.
Fantastic. You can go for it.
I had a few, but one.
Just ask one, though. Lots of people want their turn.
Hello, I'd just like to ask all the candidates what they would like, what would be the best way for Oban itself to be represented by the councillors, and if you're representing us, could you tell us what you've done thus far? Any of the local council or any of your councillors, what have they done for Oban thus far that you'd be proud of?
Doogie, I'm gonna overrule the question.
Why?
Because I've got you down as asking a question around third sector funding. And that's what I've got here. And this is obviously about the Scottish elections.
No, I didn't ask. I wasn't.
That wasn't you.
Well,
do you want to ask something that's relevant to the Scottish parliamentary election? If you can turn it round to that, rather than about the local council,
Well,
what people have done.
no, I'm all right.
You sure?
I'm sure I did.
We'll move on to the next one. Thank you.
No bother.
Sorry about that. We've obviously had a little
Well, you didn't.
error on our little grid. Right, what's next down here? So we have. I'm hoping we've got a question from Danny Owen. On. Danny, are you in the room? You are in the room, and you've got a question on island communities. Is that right? I'm doubting my table now.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Danny On. I'm a director of Corran Community Development Company, so I'm from an island. My question is, what key measures would you retain or introduce that would support sustainable island communities and allow them to manage their own futures?
we start with Jenny first.
Thanks, Danny, for your question. I too live on an island, although I haven't been there very regularly for the last wee while. I think one of the most important things that you can do is devolve funding to an island and allow them to make decisions on that. And the great example of that is the bus service on Barra, which was originally led by the council in Stornoway, but through devolving the budget down to Barra, then that gave them decisions to make the best bus route work for them. I also think there's a real strength in collaboration, and that's not just collaboration across the community, but it's collaboration with the council and also the Scottish Government and also any industry that you have. And there are examples of that I can think of on Isla, but also on Colonsay, where Danny is from, with regard to the new housing. And that again makes such a difference, has made such a difference to Colonsay, giving more properties for people to live there, to run their businesses from, to make, and I think actually one of the TSI employees lives on Colonsay as well. So it just shows the importance of housing and industry and collaboration to improve life on islands. Presiding officer's always telling me off as well.
I'm also from an island. I'm from the Isle of Bute. That's the ward that I represent. And for me, one of the biggest issues is connectivity. And by that, I mean both digital connectivity and physical connectivity with reliable ferries that run to timetable, and serve the communities rather than the other way around. So my focus is on making sure we have good, reliable digital connectivity that allows people to work from the islands and also to pursue leisure interests from the islands, and also to ensure that the ferries are reliable and that both that serves the local community and people that are coming to visit and put income into the community.
So I think the first step in the first 100 days of our Scottish Labour government would be to pass a local democracy bill pushing more power out of Holyrood and towards local communities. Community councils are often viewed as a talking shop and don't often have real meaningful power, and it's about meaningful decision-making capacity that we want to introduce. Any decisions that affect islanders should have islanders involved in it. It's so simple. And that should be upheld in statute to make sure that they can't be bypassed, as well as involvement in any bodies' decisions, like, for example, the boards of transport agencies. They should involve islanders in, again, a meaningful way and a statutory way.
Well, our manifesto will contain a policy that would allow any community, whether it be mainland or island, to set up a local council with the particular functions that are devolved to that council will be decided by agreement. I think that would be especially helpful for islands, where any island which wanted to establish its own local council would be able to do so, and that means that island would also benefit from the local government funding formula, which at the moment is very generous to Orkney, the three island councils, Orkney, Shetland and the Western Isles. But because our islands are part of Argyll and Bute Council, money goes to Argyll and Bute Council, which then decides what to give to the islands. So by having its own local council, it would benefit from the more generous island council funding formula.
Danny, do you want to do a follow-up, or have you got a comment to make?
Just one quickly. I'm just busy scribbling notes so I can report back. Thank you, those are all useful answers. I wondered if someone would mention the ferries. It's really just a comment rather than a follow-up question. Money has been poured into our little island to support us, and I would say quite rightly. And there is, but that is put highly at risk if we don't have those communications. So it's good to hear comments about digital and physical communications and about further support. So thank you.
Thank you, Danny. I'm going to move on to Laura now from Time for Change. Question 3 on land. You got that?
Concentrating concentration of land ownership is well known, with half full privately owned rural land in Scotland held by only 433 individuals. Increasing political support for market-driven carbon credits is leading to private finance acquiring large swathes of land across Scotland. How does your party plan to avoid the injustices of the past, delivering land reform while also storing carbon and restoring biodiversity?
Should we start with you, Peter? Are you okay with this? I'll walk slowly up towards your end.
I'll be perfectly honest with you, and this is not an area that I'm familiar with, so I'm not going to trick myself up by promising something that I don't know. So what the commitment I will give you is that I will go and I will look into it some more so that I'm better informed.
So, also not an expert, but I think legislating is one thing, obviously important. I think land reform could go further in Parliament, but enforcement, I think, is where it often falls flat in its face. I think it's all good legislating really well about land reform and about any environmental related or sustainability legislation, but if it's not enforced, if there's not somebody who's seriously making it happen in the real world and taking people to account who have money to fight back on these things, then it might as well not have been legislated for at all. So that's something we would want to change.
Well, it was the first Scottish Government, the Labour Liberal Democrat coalition, that passed the Land Reform Bill that it has enabled many communities in Scotland to buy their land, and in many cases that was backed up by the Land Fund, where grants were given to support communities that were buying their land. I would like to go further. The frustrating problem, though, is that the Human Rights Act, which I support, does give these big landowners certain rights, which they've got human rights as well. It may be a bit annoying at times, but they do have human rights, and that has has made it much more difficult to go further, which is why I don't think land reform has gone much further in the last 20 years. But I would certainly be very willing to discuss with people and with lawyers ways that we can take land reform further.
Thanks, Laura, for the question. Land reform is a journey. It was one of the first political areas that I got involved in because of land ownership on Islay and the way that is, and the level of tenant farmers that are there that have very few rights. A bill passed in the last session that's recognised that yes, it needs to go further to ensure that these rights are fairer. Similarly with the crofting bill, it was also passed, and I think crofting is one of the most important areas of land reform, because that's a really good place to ensure that we do maintain that biodiversity, but also we are giving people places to live and places to earn a living, maybe not full-time but also part-time, and I think that's incredibly important. And also I think the whole understanding that people have of their land, I think we have a bit of a lack of that in Scotland, and I think there needs to be more education. So I think when we've got young children, young people visiting crofts, it's a great way for them to learn. And if I'm thinking of ones in Lismore and others in Argyll, it's a really key way of educating people.
Thank you, Pamela. Laura, any additional questions or thoughts you'd like to share?
I just want to, it's a complicated one because it's twofold to do with the land reform, but also how the idea of these marketed carbon credits, the impact that that's having on Scottish rural land, whilst also still thinking we do need to look at biodiversity, we do need to look at how we're solving carbon problems. I'd also like to say thank you, Peter, for your honesty. That was part of our discussion. Was these questions are also about making people think, not just about pinning people to manifestos. And so hopefully that has achieved that, and I thank you for that.
Thank you, Laura. Jill, where are you? You're here early. There you go. So it's your question now, and we're talking about health and social care partnership and preventative work.
Hi, yes, I'm Jill Bruce from Lorna and Oban Healthy Options. Government and local HSCP strategies prioritise prevention and early intervention to address the crisis our health and social care services are in. Yet the third sector, essential to delivering prevention, face cuts, short-term flat rate funding and limited involvement in strategy. What will you do to ensure the third sector is recognised and protected as essential infrastructure with a role in strategic planning and worthy of long-term investment?
Thanks, Jill. And Callum, you're first. I'll walk slowly again.
Yeah, I think it's a great example of where the third sector are providing core services that a lot of people probably imagine are being provided by the health service, and people need to know that that's not the case. I've always been supportive of the idea of those who are involved in delivering prevention services and early intervention for a multitude of healthcare issues to have a seat at the table of deciding what the strategy actually is, because people who actually do the work know best, and it's always frustrating, as a doctor, as a GP registrar, not being able to, not having the tools that I would like to have at my disposal to work on prevention and to prevent the healthcare issues which are getting dealt with by acute hospitals, and by then, of course, it's far too late. So yes, certainly support more funding, and also, importantly, decision-making capacity that again is meaningful.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Well, as I said in the introduction, our manifesto will promise more funding for third sector organisations, and also long-term funding so that organisations can be confident for the future and have stability. The decision maker here is the Health and Social Care Partnership. So if I was elected as your MSP, I would want to work with the Health and Social Care Partnership and with third sector organisations that were providing health and social care services, and try to bring the provider and the decision maker, the Health and Social Care Partnership, together and trying to get a discussion going about providing the best services we can for the local community.
Jill, thank you for your question. I am very clear that the way that we solve the situation we are within the NHS and improve preventative and shift spend to prevention is in partnership with the third sector. I have had the pleasure of meeting with you and hearing about what you do, meeting people that have benefited from what you do, and I have shared that with Scottish Government to ensure, prior to being in government and since being in government, the population health framework that was launched last year is clear that we need to change where our funding is going, but it's a really difficult conundrum to match. And for my own health prevention, walking my dog on the beach on Isla is where I start thinking about how can we shift funding, because we know that we have to keep funding the NHS to support people that are requiring operations, but we also have to find a way of doing that more efficiently, more effectively, to allow us to put that money into prevention to ensure that we have a healthier and thriving population in Scotland. And thank you hugely for what you do at local.
Peter, over to you.
I think the difficulty with the prevention is that seems to be the area that's under most pressure when budgets are cut. Things that we know will deliver long-term savings are the things that are under pressure first, because it takes time to see the benefits. And I recognise that the pressures that the health and social care are under, and that's why in the council I introduced a motion to declare a health and social care emergency, because I think the situation is that serious. COSLA had suggested in their manifesto that the Scottish Government should provide £750 million extra for health and social care, but unfortunately the Scottish Government didn't do that in the budget. So that money would have meant an extra £10 million for Argyll and Bute, and that's money that we don't have.
Jill, do you have any further comments or additional questions? A couple of reflections?
I think the key point that I really want to make, it's more of a comment than a question, is it's not about just funding. This is about a strategic alliance within our communities and really giving third sector the voice and the power to be heard. The trajectory that we face in our communities is a crisis. We are in that crisis right now. You just need to look at the burden of disease projection. And it's coming down the line at 100 miles an hour. So we need, third sector need to be at the table, being heard and having the power of a vote towards changing, rather than being seen as coming for a begging bowl of funding. So I think that's my...
We're about 2/3 of the way through now, so we're going through at a decent clip. So we may get to additional questions from the floor, but we've got some more questions in front of us. My next question is from Harris Simpson. Do you want me to read that out, or are you happy to read it? Fantastic.
So Caris is actually my daughter, and she wasn't able to attend tonight. She is a marine biology student at SAMS. And Caris says Scotland, and particularly the West Coast, has the most untapped potential for fish farming and aquaculture that could bring fair revenue and jobs to communities. But it's a sector that faces huge scrutiny and recently big environmental concerns. Do you have any thoughts on how you could support and encourage this sector?
Is it you, Alan? I think it is. Thank you.
Well, I actually had a meeting with a representative of the sector a few months ago, and actually the question I asked him was why every time you put a planning application forward is it met with huge opposition locally, and he said that the sector had they had cleaned up their act enormously compared to many years before, that a lot of the environmental problems which he accepted had existed years ago had been solved. So I think that the sector, I mean, the question is correct, that if there is tremendous potential there, but I think it's up to the sector to convince the various SEPA and the council and public opinion that it is not causing any environmental problems, and I would certainly be willing to work with the sector, and it really has to convince everybody that there are not environmental problems. But if we successfully convince people of that and the regulators, then yes, it has a great future.
Thank you for the question, and I'm so pleased that Caris is studying at SAMS. I was there yesterday. It is the most amazing place. I think I'm always blown away when I see the seaweed library and the wealth of knowledge and the wealth of ways that we could use these cultures to improve healthcare, whether it's in cancer care, and it's great to hear from them. With regards, but more widely as well, we also saw the robotics, and they're going out and doing natural environment testing to measure temperatures, for example, of the ocean from here up to Iceland. They're also going into schools to sharing the knowledge. So I was saying yesterday, it's not blue sky thinking we need, it's blue sea thinking we need to ensure that we really benefit with regards to aquaculture. The Scottish Government's currently modernising the regulations to improve the environmental safeguards around fish farming, which I think is incredibly important to ensure that it's sustainable, because it is a key element of the Scottish economy, but it also provides a very, very healthy, protein-rich foodstuff. So there's lots we can do, and if I'm re-elected, then that is something I will absolutely focus on.
I think I would recognise the importance of aquaculture to our economy. You know, it's 468 million pounds employing 2,200 people directly and 10,000 in the supply chain. So it is an important part of the economy, and it contributes both to direct jobs and also jobs locally servicing these facilities. In terms of things that I don't think help aquaculture are the highly protected marine areas that we're trying to try to reduce fishing areas by 10%. I think we need to look at that. Obviously that was rejected, and I think things like that aren't helpful in supporting aquaculture and those that are working in the fishing industry.
So I think it's obvious that the water is a massive economic driver, or the most massive economic driver for this whole area and for Argyll more widely. But you know, Scotland doesn't really have a coherent industrial strategy at the moment. We would need to bring in a national industrial strategy that prioritises rural industry, which includes a marine plan, which has a spatial approach to provide clarity for all the different people who are going to be involved in the marine world, including, you know, offshore wind, fisheries, coastal communities and fishers there, to clarify their roles and tailor that to the local economic strengths. I'm looking with interest at Sanda Island now that it's been purchased, and to see if things actually will be better for that island now that it's in the hands of aquaculture business, and I have a feeling that it will, rather than when it was privately owned and left to rot.
Susan, do you want to do a follow-up on that?
So yeah, I'm sorry she couldn't be here to answer your reports there. I think her feeling as a second year student is that we do need to be collaborating with other countries who are successful in you know, making their aquaculture more part of the community and part of the kind of national feeling. So yeah, thank you.
David Price, you've got a question on volunteering. Come to you.
Yeah, good evening. I'm David Price. I represent Ready for Disabled, and I need my notes and my glasses, so just bear with me. Okay, my question is this, and it's to do with the fact that there's a lot less people volunteering in Argyll now than there used to be. How would you address the increasing charity governance, administration and legislative burden currently discouraging volunteers?
I think that's you, Jenny, to start.
Probably the one I'm least able to give you a direct answer, David. So my apologies for that. It's something that I'm very happy to have a further conversation with you. I think I'm right in saying that a few years ago, Riding for the Disabled in Argyll and Bute won the TSI award for being one of the best areas of supporting people. Volunteering is something that, as I highlighted earlier, is something that I have done and do whenever I can. And I'm having, in my last 5 years, having had conversations with the retained fire service, I know that they've struggled to get volunteers as well. And the fire service has looked at how they can perhaps change the way that they train people to allow them to leave their normal place of work to attend training for retained fire service. So I think we've got a model there that actually I'd be very happy to discuss further with you to see how we can improve on things there. Peter?
I think we definitely need to look at the things that organisations are being asked to report on, and the administrative burden that groups are under. You know, we shouldn't be asking voluntary groups to compile reports that aren't related to the direct, you know, to their core purpose. We should be streamlining that process as much as possible, so that they can concentrate on supporting our communities and delivering the services that matter to people.
I think the simple answer to your question is to cut the red tape, to get rid of the bureaucracy and waste, reduce the administrative load on community services and organisations, and I think an overhaul of the skills system will make a big difference as well. Regional employability hubs which embed training and workforce development locally and make it easier for people to train or retrain, I think will be essential, and a bonfire of the quangos will also help, to use a phrase I don't really like, but I like the meaning of it, because there's so much money wasted on bureaucracy and paperwork that doesn't need to be there. Also, a unified one-stop shop for support for community organisations and advice, as well as for business, I think would be a positive step.
I think that's the TSI that provides a one-stop shop for advice. And I would be concerned about burning all quangos, or a number of them, until you understand exactly what they do. And I think there's, and you don't know which these are, because you probably don't know the entire list. I certainly don't. But I also think you've got to be really careful as well about when you talk about getting rid of red tape and bureaucracy, because I know you need to ensure you still have health and safety, and to burn all of that is a mistake.
Unnecessary stuff.
Well, although it was only the mic carrier there. Yes, I agree entirely with what Jenny has just said. It's a difficult question to answer, because we've got to ask ourselves, why is all that bureaucracy and red tape there? And a good number of years ago there were quite a few scandals where people had been stealing money from charities, and there was a demand that something has to be done, quite rightly. So bureaucracy and red tape was introduced, and there are less horror stories these days about charities, money getting stolen from charities, so it seems to have worked in that regard. But it also seems to have had the other unfortunate side effect of making it more difficult for people to work with charities. So, I mean, what I suggest is that if I'm successful in the election, you come to see me at one of my early surgeries in Oban. We can discuss it, and I can then discuss the matter with the relevant minister and see what can be done to lighten the burden, while at the same time making it difficult for criminals to steal from charities.
David, do you want to make a further point, a reflection on the contributions you've had?
Just one tiny bit quick. I do think the answer is proportionality and risk. You guys are setting this legislation to the risk profiles and the activities of the organisations it aimed at.
Thank you, and I think the next question is from Norman Martin. Are you in the audience, Norman? And no Norman here. Okay. I will then move on to Not One Time for Change. I think you had a question on...
Two political questions, one's a central.
Indeed, that's it, go for it.
Climate change-fueled storm events have become increasingly frequent and unpredictable over recent years, leaving coastal communities particularly vulnerable. Storm Airwin in January 2025 is estimated to have cost the council £7.3 million in damage to roads, coastal defences and harbours. The effects of storm damage are felt especially by those who work outside, like fishermen and farmers. How does your party propose to help individuals, businesses and essential local services adapt to extreme weather events?
Right, I've lost track. Is this you, Peter? I'm going to hand it to you. Would we have the question again?
No, I don't think that we did. No, I mean, I think it's definitely important that we are making greater provision for the impact of storm events. So I think that in the planning process that we need to be taking these things into account so that we're better prepared for what might happen and mitigating against that in the future.
I think it's probably a lot of it is to do with adaptation and trying to share best practice and standards. If we could do that nationally, then I think that would make a big difference. And again, it probably comes down a lot of it to training skills, building it into how people are trained if they are going to be operating in an environment where they are at risk because of these storm events.
Well, first of all, we have to do our best to prevent climate change by reducing our carbon emissions and working internationally to encourage other countries to do the same. In terms of mitigation, then when building ships or building buildings near the coast, yes, we probably have to increase the specification to make them more robust. Also listen to local people. I mean, for example, in Helensburgh, local people said to the council, don't build the leisure centre right where it is, right on the seafront. The council did, and well, the roof blew off. So I think listening to local people is probably important.
Good answer, Alan. I like that. And I'm going to say I was also listening to local people when I was on Isla the last time, and I was visiting Port Ellen Primary School, and climate change was the top question that they asked. And I think as a politician, a member, if any of us are elected, or when any of us are elected to the Scottish Parliament, then I think we've always got to remember that we get such good information from the younger people in our society. And Alan's right, we do need to reduce our carbon footprint. I've been involved in a number of the events after Storm Eowyn, and what I did there was ensure that the local community got to speak to SSEN because there was flooding down just north of Loch Gilphead. I've also, as a result of what happened in the last storm in Tiree, the community were brilliant in that, and they've done a resilience plan which we've shared with the Scottish Government SCORE committee, and also I've been speaking a lot with regards to flood planning, because I'm concerned that people look at the big places and forget about the small places where people live. So I've been trying to shift SEPA's focus to places like Argyll and Bute, which is at the front edge of storms.
I think
just the additional
reflection on that is to say that ultimately it already is here, as I think we know, and I think we already experience. The question was focused a lot on infrastructure and on big picture, but we also have to think about things like supply chains. I'm guessing most people in the room who are resident in Oban remember us having all major routes in and out of Oban being cut off. We remember things like all the supermarkets being out of supply because the freezers have gone down and things like that. It's thinking about the infrastructure, but also how are things set up, how are we connected to other places, and being mindful that this isn't a future plan, this is a now plan, and going from there.
Question from Noah Simpson. Noah, do you want me to read that out, or Susan? You'd like to read that out?
Okay, so again, Noah is my son, and I agreed to read this out for him. He says there's so many students needing help with mental health and with bullying. They need help in school and are being completely ignored. That help is being promised, but nothing has been done about it. His question is, do you accept that the system, education and health, is failing young people right now? And what are you actually going to do about it to make sure support is there early, properly, and for everyone who needs it? Because at the moment it doesn't feel like it's something we can rely on. And I don't think young people should have to fight this hard just to be supported, and just to say he's now supported by a charity because he couldn't get the support that he needed.
Question? And I'll start with Karen.
It's the most frustrating thing to have somebody sitting in front of you as a patient and knowing that there's a limitation to what you can do to help them, and that there's an extreme limitation on what you can do in terms of referring them to somebody who can provide help. And CAMHS waiting lists, for example, are astronomical. I think there needs to be a shift in focus to community-based interventions for, again, as we were talking about earlier in a different way, prevention. So that, you know, services like CAMHS should be a high level for people who are quite unwell, and not something that people should be just sitting waiting on as the problem continues to exist and affect them on a day-to-day basis. And for those people who are in crisis, Scottish Labour does want to deliver a dedicated mental health emergency service, which has the skills, which has the specialism available in every part of the country, so that these people don't end up having to depend too much on community organisations that aren't equipped, or the police in crisis situations.
Yes, you're quite right. That there is just simply not enough mental health practitioners in the country. I mean, it's been Liberal Democrat policy for several elections now that we need to increase the number of mental health practitioners and give early support when somebody is suffering a mental health problem, because intervention that obviously will cost money to recruit and train more mental health practitioners, but it would save costs in the long run, because early intervention will stop the problem becoming a much more serious problem. It's something that society does have to tackle. It's been in our manifesto for several elections now, and I hope that this time we will be in a place to put that into effect, because it is a serious crisis.
Thanks, Susan, and thanks, Noah. And Alan's right, this is something that the Liberal Democrats have been very strong on, and I think this is a really good example of where we should be looking across the chamber to find the right solutions, and not put barriers up because of party politics, because we have to ensure that our young people get the right support, they get the support that they need at the right time. And I feel it's interesting, having visited a number of the secondary schools in Argyll, and mental health has come up in a lot of the conversations there, and young people recognise that there are apps that they can use, but sometimes it's actually needing to speak to somebody that can understand and take the time to listen, to support. So if I am re-elected, then this is something that I recognise we have to do more on, because of the increase in the number of people that need that support in schools and more widely.
I mean, I would generally agree with what's been said so far. I mean, I think I would recognise that, as Callum says, the length of time people wait for a CAMHS appointment is just, it doesn't provide the support that they need when they need it. And even, you know, some of the school counselling services that are provided, they're great, but you're only limited to, you know, 8 appointments or whatever, so it's very limited help. I think there are examples of good practice where school hubs, when done well, can help support pupils, can help deal with the problems that they're facing, and can help bring pupils back into school when that's been an issue. So I think there are good examples out there, and it would be about recreating those more widely.
I'm just going to see if we have. Oh, actually, Sue, do you want to have a comment on that? Or no?
Thank you for that. I think his feeling is that there definitely needs to be a focus on the schools, and making sure that the schools have enough staff to support the young people. Because what he found is that promises were made that staff would support him, but those staff weren't actually physically available to do that. And I think that was part of the feeling that you feel that needs to be addressed, and as soon as possible.
Okay, do we have Neil McIntyre in the house?
Yeah.
Neil, you have a question on care in the community?
Thank you. Good evening. I don't have a manifesto, but this is the only thing that would be on it anyway, is how do we care for our elderly in Argyll and Bute? Some of our elderly are getting shipped out of Argyll because we have lack of places. We don't have housing for certain people. We have a bit of increasing maybe dementia and other things. We have an ageing population and a younger population going down. So care in the community won't work in the future. Talking to the girls that are being asked to put these things into practice, all they're putting forward is new headlines for the same thing. We have to change tack, in my opinion, my personal opinion. Obviously you don't need to agree with that, but if you do, could you tell me why you think it's working? And if you don't, let's see what else we could do to improve that.
I agree with you, Neil. I mean, when I've been door knocking over the last few months, I've knocked on many doors where people have told me about a relative or a friend that's in hospital. I mean, delayed discharge is the official term, bed blocking is the unofficial term, and that's simply because there isn't a package available for the person. So we have to put more money into care packages so that everybody who is able to get home can come home with a care package. You're also right about we need obviously workers to deliver that, and that's linked with housing. So we need to build more houses and earmark it for care workers, for key workers such as care workers. And I mean, so I think that's how I would tackle the problem, because you're right, it's a serious problem.
Thanks, Neil, for the question. And we do have an ageing population, we do have a reducing population, so we do have to find another way of looking after people. And I think one of the things that's happened brilliantly within the Oban area, and I recognise it's just the Oban area, is hospital at home, which allows people to go home earlier, and I think that's been a real breakthrough. However, if you live in Delavic, then you can't get that, so it's how do we provide that. There's a community further south from here in Cairndhu who are looking to build a house for a family to provide care for the older people in the community, and I think that's really important to look at these different options. I know exactly what you're talking about because I'm going through exactly the same with my mother, and it's how do you get the right support. And in the Women's Health Plan, one of the key areas of that is women's brain health, and how can we find solutions to support, because it is a lot of women have dementia and Alzheimer's, how do we support them? So there's lots of work that is going on, and I think it is so important to get it right, especially here. Thank you.
I certainly recognise that it's a real problem in my own ward in Bute. We have a problem with not enough care beds on the island, so people are sent away to, separated from friends and family when they're perhaps at their most vulnerable, and then they're separated without that connection. So it's a real issue, and I think we need to be doing more to create and support care beds within our local communities. And I think we also again need to look at the workforce and do a bit more in terms of workforce planning to ensure that we have the people that we need to carry out the care facilities in the community.
Hospital at Home has been absolutely transformative for the way that we work, and it's done huge amounts for the not just for the acute hospitals, but to get people out of there who do not need to be there and back home, but also for people who are already in the community and just need that extra little level of support. We would advocate national coverage for Hospital at Home, no matter how remote the area is from the central belt. I do think it's a shame the National Care Service fell flat on its face, because the state does need to be more involved in residential care homes for those who just can't stay at home because of their care needs. But in a lot of cases, as long as there's good continuity of care between primary, secondary care and social care, a lot of people can live at home as long as the right skills are nearby, and so upskilling those people is essential.
Specialist housing, that should be on the agenda. It's horrible to see these girls struggling, trying to answer the questions when it's not in their agenda, or they're not being asked, or they're not being allowed to change. I mean, I was a councillor and I voted against community care in the community way back because there's not enough people in Argyll to do that. It's a lovely thought, but it's never going to work. You know, so we need to have more care homes, we need to have more specialist housing, and again, we need the staff to run these things. So it's a big package, but I think we need to start locally with the council, not blaming anyone, but we need to change tack now, and with the response I got today, I think everyone would agree to that. It's the way forward. Thank you.
There's only 2 minutes left, so we could have a final question if someone's got a short, burning question. So short, burning question. Over to you. If you say your name, that'd be great.
John Steele. I think Callum hit it on the head here. The core of our problems is the deindustrialisation in this country. And we're now in a situation where tourism is the biggest earner that we have. And what I would like to know from the prospective candidates here is that can I get a cast iron assurance from you all that you'll do something to clear up the litter and the mess that this country's descended into? Because the voluntary sector can't cope with it. And tourism's the biggest industry that we've got. And if we leave it in the status, then nobody's going to come back.
So that leaves about 30 seconds each, and you can manage it. So I'm looking at Jenny. I think you were the quick response, and then pass it back.
You're literally talking about litter in the streets.
General neglect, lack of maintenance.
So the Scottish Government and the SNP have supported regeneration within our town centres, and there's been a lot of investment in our town centres. Oban, Dunoon, Campbelltown, I think that's really important. I think you're right. I think we need to ensure that we have people coming back. And I can remember a holiday abroad and being really upset when I saw a lot of litter and thinking about, do I want to come back here? So I think everyone has to have that pride in their community, and I think that's what the Scottish Government is aiming to achieve by investing in communities. And it will come as no surprise to you that I think that pride in our community will be lifted once we gain our independence and become a normal country in the world.
You can see the decline everywhere you go. So, but my point is,
Do you really think that?
there is decline. There is. You know, you're completely right. And when you go abroad, you go to countries which know that the value of tourism, and they know that they've got a huge dependency on that industry. Things are different. There's a lot we can learn from them. And
that's why the Clipper race
to the point where they've got over tourism, they're trying to control that as well because they've been so successful. Scotland needs to learn from that, and Scotland clearly needs changing.
Yeah. I think we need to do more to support our local businesses. There's far too many empty shops in our town centres, and we need to be doing more to encourage people to take up these units so that we have something to offer. When people come, there's shopping experiences for them to have, and the town is a thriving place.
Fantastic, thank you. Alan, the last word to you. There you go.
Yes, you're right. I mean, the litter is terrible, and it would be even worse if it wasn't for the many voluntary groups that do beach cleanups, that do path cleanups. I mean, the council is obviously responsible for clearing the litter, but the council has been squeezed and squeezed and squeezed by the Scottish Government for many years. So we should stop, government should stop squeezing councils and give councils enough money to actually do the job that they're there to do, because litter cleaning is not a statutory function in the way that the council legally has to provide, then it gets cut. So we ought to fund our councils properly so that litter cleaning and things like that can be done.
So they can get wage rises on.
Brilliant, thank you
So
very
they
much.
use all the money that they get, give all these guys massive pay rises.
Please, can we?
Well, I
We're right at the end of the meeting.
I'm not allowed to respond to the echo.
Everybody's going to echo there.
I'm not on the council. I give money to people that actually pay rise.
Right. I'm gonna call this to an end. I'm gonna call this to an end. Thank you everybody for turning up tonight, and I want to thank the panel as well. We put them through the ringer tonight. We asked them to speak for 3 minutes and then answer questions for a minute. Very, very challenging to do that. So a big thank you to our panel, and everybody have a fantastic evening. Thank you.